Well, good evening, everyone, and it's my distinct pleasure to be able to welcome you to the City Council regular meeting for Tuesday, March 4th, 2025. If we could have the clerk read the roll, please.
Mayor Karen Howe.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Amy Lamb.
Here.
Councilmember Kaylee Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Pamela Stewart.
Here.
Councilmember Kent Treen.
Present.
Councilmember Sid Gupta.
Here.
Councilmember Roisin O'Farrell.
Here.
Thank you.
Excellent. And if we could have the Pledge of Allegiance, please. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Councilmember O'Farrell. And for the land acknowledgement, Councilmember Gupta.
We acknowledge we are on the indigenous land of Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial.
That was excellent. I'd actually asked Councilmember Clark to do it, and I forgot. But I've been asking you so many times, you just have it down. So, thank you. Okay. So now we're going to go forward, and I would like to see if we could approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And now we're going straight to public comment. Tom O'Dell.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Tom O'Dell. I'm a 35-year-plus resident of Sammamish and also a former council member. I'm here tonight to talk about the town center and some comments that I've reviewed since we had the last meeting about this subject. I went through the 60, 70-plus pages of public comments on that were part of the agenda item 8, exhibit 3, and this is pages 97 through 167. And I did some counting on them. I also looked at what the staff had done, and under the summary comments received, this is an item under new business, page 87, 289 of the package for that meeting. And there were a number of issues raised by people that are of concern, road capacity, school capacity, infrastructure, et cetera. I'm not going to read them all to you because I'm sure you've read them yourself. But what I am here tonight to talk about is when I went through all the 200 comments in detail. I had insomnia one night, so I did it. I totaled them all up. Worksheet here, I'll give you a copy in a minute. But of the 200 comments, we had 11 people who were commenting in favor of town center. We had 20 who had a neutral comment or was looking for more information on it. There were 169 who were against it, 84.5%. So I think absent a vote on the issue, this is a pretty good straw poll, folks. And I think that it would be very good of you to pay close attention to this. And also that perhaps we really should have a vote on the issue before this becomes a done deal. There are an awful lot of people, according to this information, that are not in favor of it. So I'm going to encourage this council to very seriously consider having an advisory vote or a binding vote, I don't care which, on the town center expansion plan. We went through this with the community center, and guess what? It passed. This one may pass too, but at least let's give the people of the city of Sammamish a role in the decision more than they've had, a direct role in voting it. So with that, I'm going to say thank you, and I will give these to the city clerk for her to distribute to each of you later on. But do take a look at it. I've got a summary vote and a summary of the comments as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Felicia Quang.
Good evening, council members. We are from the Lens of Youth. I'm Florence Tiang,
And I'm Felicia Tiang.
and we're here to present our project Misunderstood Moments. So the Lens of Youth is a nonprofit organization that advocates for all people with developmental disabilities, and our volunteers are all from Sammamish. And I'd like to start our project off with this story. Please imagine this. One cozy afternoon, a group of moms are chatting away with an infant sleeping on the couch. Then the hostess's 6-year-old son comes home and slips through the moms to go to the living room. The moms keep chatting, and suddenly they hear a loud wailing noise. They go to see what happened and saw that the boy had woken up the baby, and he seemed almost unaware of the commotion he has caused. The infant's mom quickly scooped up her baby and left the scene, with the other moms following suit, leaving the hostess there with a flush of embarrassment on her face.
So please keep in mind here, how do you think the mom felt and why do you think the boy woke up the baby? We'll come back to this later.
The reason why we want to do this project is because we want to promote empathy and shift public perception. The people with developmental disabilities are often misunderstood and think they've been doing something wrong, when in reality their behaviors are just not understood, or they don't know the full reason behind it. By telling their real life stories, we could share the truth behind their behaviors and create change with understanding.
So how will we execute misunderstood moments? We will collect 50 real-life stories from the developmental disability community about their experiences being misunderstood by the public. Each story will be accompanied by an illustration from an artist in the community. And we will also broadcast this to the public through a couple avenues, such as exhibitions in libraries, corporations, seminars in schools, and through online, our website, and social media. We hope to target everyone in the community.
This initiative is not just a one-time campaign, but it is a movement to a more inclusive society, and we hope you can support us so we can gain more trust.
Now, back to the story from the beginning with the boy and the TV. It turns out he only woke up the baby because his mother told him it was rude to watch TV while someone else was sleeping. So in his brain, he wanted to watch his favorite TV show and decided that the only solution for this was to wake the baby up. He wasn't trying to be mean or rude. He just thought that was the only way he could do what he wanted. This was caused by his disability. Now his mom also felt embarrassed that her friends left without so much as a goodbye. To reduce judgment in the community, we hope misunderstood moments will help reduce judgment and also increase perception. We hope that you can support us through a couple of methods, as you can see on your handout. If we could have some feedback about this project maybe, and if there's any possibilities we could qualify for a grant or collaboration with commissions, and maybe any communication with KCLS so we can do our exhibitions there, that would all be amazing. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Is there any more public comment in the room? And if not, we will go to online.
Those who had pre-registered today, if you would like to comment, please raise your hand online. Oh, you did?
For public hearing or public comment? Want to give public comment? He does, yeah. For the hearing or for general public comment?
Okay.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Good evening, Council. I'm sorry my earphones weren't working correctly. My name is Wally Pereira. I live at 148 East Lake Sammamish Parkway Southeast. I've resided on Ebright Creek on a small farm west of the plateau since 1973. It's going on 52 plus years. I'm a certified fisheries biologist and a founding member of the Kokanee Working Group. Ebright Creek is one of the most important spawning streams for our Kokanee salmon. Much of the town center development is in the Ebright Creek watershed. For that reason, I've been particularly concerned about the impact of runoff from this development into Ebright Creek. My concern is heightened as I have witnessed over the years increasing runoff flowing into Ebright Creek from development, despite developments being required to meet both King County and Sammamish stormwater management codes. Ebright Creek flows through a wetland waterway under 212th Avenue Southeast, just south of Ebright Park. Changes in the character of that waterway over the years highlights my concerns about runoff impacts from the town center development. Back in the late 70s and early 80s, when the plateau began to be developed, this large wetland complex would fill up periodically and close 212th to traffic. At that time, King County resolved the problem by raising the roadbed. But as development continued, runoff was increasingly flushed into this waterway such that this large wetland no longer functioned as a wetland. It became more like a detention pond, flooding in the winter and being dry during the summer. As a result of this change, all the trees have died. If you go by, you can see them. You go down 212th. This is a standing testimonial that development impacts have continued to increase over the years, despite the county and city's promises to the contrary. The egregious proposed expansion of the town center development will only increase the associated runoff with impacts to Ebright Creek and our Kokanee salmon. As flooding increases, there will most likely be travel disruptions on 212th Avenue Southeast that will spill over into other arterials in the city. There will be increased flooding in Ebright Creek together with slides in the canyon and major impacts to my property. There very well could be a major impact to the parkway itself, as happened in the 1980s from the flooding of George Davis Creek. To alleviate my concerns, I would ask that the council put on hold any further expansion or development of town center and undertake a full analysis of runoff and traffic impacts to our city, its citizens, and our Kokanee salmon. Furthermore, considering the likely impacts of town center development
Thank you.
to the residents of Sammamish, I would ask that we follow Mayor Odell's suggestion for a referendum. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, is there anybody else in the room that I've missed? Okay, then we can go to online.
Okay, I will promote the first commenter. Mr. Stickney.
Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, City Council. It's Paul Stickney here, Sammamish. Nice to hear Tom and Wally speak. Understand those concerns, and not to be nitpicky at all, but the town center scoping jot form survey was what over the years has been referred to as a self-selecting survey, as was during the 2019 housing strategy plan that had about, and that was called Sammamish Homegrown, that had about 475 people self-select, and about 62% wanted housing for life. And the community survey in 2014, 60% of a statistically valid survey wanted housing supplies to stay or to have, a choice over time. So I do agree with getting more information and having input and maybe putting it to a vote. I sent in some information today on agenda topic number 11, which is the fee in lieu topic. You can look that over yourself. A couple comments on the fee in lieu process. I've noticed the Planning Commission is going to look at what happens to charging a fee for affordable housing if a home is, hurt or damaged in fire or some other peril. That's a good thing to consider. A couple other things to consider are what happens if somebody does a one-for-one replacement? So if somebody takes down a home for whatever their reason and builds something new, what's the process there for the fee charged? What about if there's a significant addition to a smaller house on a existing lot? And something else that I think is interesting to consider a spectrum of alternatives on is if you're considering not charging the affordable fee for maybe 1,000 or 1,200 square feet to begin with, and I know there's not a lot of other cities that have been doing this. Redmond has, but I've been thinking about this. I think there might be, and I've gone back and forth on lots of options, and I've landed on one I kind of like. Issaquah has a sliding scale of wetland impact. The more impact, the less you get to use your site, and it's on a scale. It's interesting. Maybe the larger a house gets, the less credit of 1,000 feet somebody else could get, but I think some credit should go to all people who are going to purchase or, do a new house instead of paying the full fee. Appreciate the chance to speak.
Thank you.
I will now promote the second commenter. Mary Wichter.
Good evening. This is Mary Wichter. I appreciate all the public comment that came before, and I particularly like the two girls who talked about the empathy. I think understanding people is very important. I did want to speak a little bit on town center, the need for it, and stormwater. I started getting involved in 2014 and started attending meetings in 2015, both for the city council, some of the planning commission, which I do most of those now, and I've also been going to the water and sewer district meetings for 3 times a month for almost 10 years, since 2015. I think it's really important that people commenting, if there's something that you don't know or you're scared about, you really need to research it more. We have a problem that the vacant lots in Sammamish, if you simply just let them build out on big single family homes, it's not sustainable. In fact, it's already not sustainable because Sammamish has been 85% large single family homes and 15% other types of dwellings. And one of the reasons we're having the fiscal crisis that we have, where expenses are going to overrun revenues, and that's very impending and going to hit in 2029. And I think the city's doing everything they can about it. We need to have a different way that we grow. We have a lot of people that have the large single family homes, and the suburbia costs too much. What you need is more stacked units in a central area. And where I live, where there are critical areas, the city is supposed to subtract out those acreages and not even build on them. But because of historic lots being platted in 1889 and 1964, people, if they own a lot, they can build on it, and they try and it fails, and they take way more trees down or all the trees down, and a lot of them stall and a lot of the people foreclose. So we need somewhere for those units to go, and town center is the place to put them. And if you have 3 stacked units, 5 stacked units, or whatever we can go to in height, you end up having less building emissions. It's better for climate. It takes less trees. It gives people an activity area where the commercial systems will actually work. And one thing I want to talk about is stormwater. The city chose to use a bifurcated stormwater manual using the 1999 stormwater code from King County and the 2009 code for too long. I believe when the community center was put in, it was slightly different, and I think that's a giant stormwater vault, and we haven't had problems with that portion of it. what's happened is the plateau where the town center is was cleared a long time ago, and the code will make people put in stormwater back to the pre-forested condition. So actually, I think building the stormwater rules are tighter than they used to be, and they actually won't cause the problem. The problem is we had so much development using those old codes for so long, the city was forced to stop using them at the end of 2016. So in 2017 was the first time we got a reprieve from a really old stormwater code, and then we got some stormwater code amendments in 2019. So I wanted to make sure people know that history before you make up your minds on things. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all for public comment. Per our reasonable accommodation policy, you would need to pre-register by 5 p.m. on the day of the meeting to cityclerk@sammamish.us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sorry, I'd asked to remove item number 5 from the consent agenda.
Okay. Is there an amended motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we have approved consent calendar, but pulling item number 5. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Aye.
Okay, motion carries. We're on to presentations and proclamations. Our first proclamation will be read by Councilmember Stewart, and it's Women's History Month.
Thank you. Women's History Month, March 2025. Whereas Women's History Month is celebrated each March to recognize and honor the vital contributions of women in shaping our history, culture, and society. And whereas the 2025 theme, Moving Forward Together, Women Educating and Inspiring Generations, celebrates the collective strength, equality, and influence of women who have dedicated their lives to education, mentorship, and leadership, shaping minds and fostering progress. And whereas women educators, mentors, and leaders have played a pivotal role in advancing opportunity, representation, and access, ensuring knowledge, inspiration, and success that uplift individuals and communities. And whereas the City of Sammamish recognizes the achievements of the women who have shaped our community, including the women who have served as mayors and council members, demonstrating the power of leadership and civic engagement in building a more inclusive and equitable society. And whereas throughout history, women have empowered themselves and others through solidarity, mentorship, and collaboration, fostering environments that encourage growth and success. And whereas it is essential to continue integrating women's history into our classrooms, workplaces, and civic spaces to ensure that the contributions of women are acknowledged, celebrated, and preserved for future generations. And whereas all people are encouraged to participate in the celebration of Women's History Month by recognizing the empowerment and contributions of women and supporting efforts that foster growth and leadership. Now, therefore, Mayor Karen Howe of the City of Sammamish, on behalf of the Sammamish City Council, does hereby proclaim March 2025 to be Women's History Month in the City of Sammamish.
Hear, hear. Okay, so you got through it.
Mayor Howe, could you just clarify the consent calendar vote? I just wasn't sure I could. Did everybody vote on that one?
The vote, we pulled an item.
Yes, so was it
100%.
set, was it?
But the first vote, there were 6 for, 1 against.
Okay, and who was the against?
Kent Tree.
Okay, and then the amended motion was?
To be, to pull number 5.
Yes, and was that
And
unanimous?
that was then unanimous.
Okay, and then where is that going to be placed on the?
I think there was no vote the first time. He just pulled it, and it was 6.
Oh, did I stop the vote, stop it before we actually voted?
Oh, yeah.
That would be good.
Oh, okay.
6-1, the first, just on the amended.
And the amended, and who was the opposed?
Well, Kent
But
opposed
on the
it.
amended motion.
But
what
then
was
it was unanimous.
Okay.
I thought
Okay, thank you. And then where is it going to be placed on the agenda?
it will be placed last.
Under
during-
new business?
Just, yes.
Okay, thank you. You got it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And so I believe we have an update now from our chief of police.
It'll be the very end.
Oh, no. Oh, God.
Good evening, Mayor Howe, Deputy Mayor Lamb, esteemed council. Before I begin my update, we're going to have a brief presentation. So please enjoy this slideshow while I talk.
Oh, my God, my son.
As you know, after almost 8 years of service to our community, our friend Christine Elias is moving on from the Sammamish Police Department. It's with both excitement and a touch of sadness that I stand here today to say thank you to Christine Elias as she prepares to begin a new and exciting chapter in her career as the police chief for the Muckleshoot Indian Tribe. We're thrilled for Christine and the opportunity ahead of her. We're certainly going to miss her here in Sammamish. Christine has had an extraordinary career of over 30 years. She marked 30 years actually in January. And she's truly worn many hats, from her early years in patrol to becoming the field training officer and even serving as Skyline School District's very first school resource officer. She's shown a passion for helping others in every role she's taken on. Her 15 years as a detective with the KCSO Special Assault Unit, where she worked tirelessly to bring justice to victims, speaks volumes about her commitment to this community. Christine's leadership truly shined when she was promoted to sergeant in 2016 and later as she served as a police training sergeant and even backup media relations officer. She would then take on the administrative sergeant role here in 2018 and has supported 3 chiefs in Sammamish since, often serving as acting chief. And let's not forget the time she served as interim in 2022, where for 4 months she stepped up to lead our police department with grace, humor, and incredible professionalism. That old adage, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. For my part, over the last 2.5 years, Christine has been my partner in Sammamish. She's been a pillar of support for me, for this police department, this city, and this community. And her personal investment in us has been immeasurable. Her unwavering dedication and commitment have not only helped guide us through the challenges, but also inspired everyone around her to do better and to be better. Because with every interaction, she has demonstrated just how she cares about others, and that is quite a legacy. So Christine, thank you for all that you've done for the Sammamish Police Department in this community. You've made such a positive impact, and while we're sad to see you go, we couldn't be more excited for the Muckleshoot tribe to benefit from your leadership. I'm sure they're just as eager as we are to see the amazing things that you'll accomplish in your new role. We wish you nothing but success. You've left your mark on all of us, and we're so grateful for your service to this community. I have 2 small tokens of appreciation. The first is from PSPMA, the Puget Sound Police Managers Association, which is the executive-level leadership team and union for the Sheriff's Office. I've never actually presented one of these before, and I've got a small stack of them for just such an occasion, but this is to be provided to someone, bestowed upon them, upon excellence in leadership, and she certainly demonstrated that throughout her time in Sammamish, and definitely for the 4 months she served as the interim chief. So, well, we'll keep that in there. And a small plaque, a token of our appreciation. Assistant Chief Christine Elias, in appreciation for your leadership, integrity, and commitment to quality policing. You've made a significant impact that will be felt for many years to come. Thank you from Chief Lysett, the men and women of the Sammamish Police Department, and the community of Sammamish. We have an opportunity to take a
Yeah,
photo
we're going
with
to
the
take a
council.
picture. So, council, if you would join us out here.
Thank you, Mayor.
Extremely appropriate for Women's History Month, I think.
And on with our presentation. It's our new team photo. Detective Keith Gaffin wanted to be here. Something came up at the last minute, so I'm not sure if he's watching online, but I'll make sure he sees this later. Keith Gaffin was named our Sammamish PD Employee of the Year, and is my honor to recognize him as such. His dedication, skill, and leadership have made a significant impact on our team. His expertise is invaluable, and his mentorship has shaped the future of this department. Whether leading DUI training or solving complex cases, he consistently goes above and beyond. I've had the pleasure of knowing Keith for his entire career here at the Sheriff's Office. He came after 3 years from WSP, but he and I worked together in Shoreline starting in 2014, so I can vouch firsthand. He is just a tremendous officer, and we're so lucky to have him here in the city of Sammamish. He's a great collaborator with state and local agencies, and his outstanding work has been demonstrated not once but twice in the last 2 years, especially in regard to the telecom copper wire thefts that has plagued this entire region. His work in cooperation with some of the adjoining agencies led to the arrests of several suspects and the recovery of copper. Better yet, when we were plagued with a rash of burglaries in 2023. Keith Gaffin was one of the point officers that created a task force here in the region, and that the theft group that was operating was beginning, I think, down in the Auburn area and traveled all the way up to Bellingham. So it was a massive effort, and Keith was on point from the beginning, which has resulted in arrests and helping hold those accountable that were responsible. So he's admired by his peers for his positive attitude, his work ethic, and his investigative excellence. And this recognition reflects the profound impact he's had on all of us. So if you see him walking around City Hall, please congratulate him. Inclement weather police response. I just wanted to share a little bit with you about what you can expect when we have inclement weather, significant incidents. And I'll keep hearkening back to the bomb cyclone. But first, I'll preface this by saying we now, through the use of PSERN radios, that's the Puget Sound Emergency Radio Network. Shout out to Mark Baird for furnishing us one of those. But we are now in direct contact with city staff, specifically Public Works, on dedicated channels. So what that means is we provide a roster of our on-duty personnel to city staff, specifically Public Works, and they're able to call us directly, either on channels or they have our cell phone numbers as well. And they're not left to be triaged by non-emergency 911 when we can respond immediately. So this is a huge step forward for us that has just, I think it's been about a year in the making, so this is great now that we're on the PSERN channels with our dedicated city staff. But other things you can expect from us in a inclement weather response. We will respond to traffic collisions. We will provide traffic control for road closures in support of Public Works. We will conduct welfare checks of vulnerable residents. We will respond to residential alarms, which are frequent, as you can imagine, as power is restored. We will staff warming centers when appropriate. I'm going to circle back to that in a little bit. We conduct high visibility patrols, especially in areas without power, to let our community members know that we're present and ready to help. And we assist with road clearings. Little story about that. The day after the bomb cyclone began, I received a call from Sergeant Rich Barton, who's the direct supervisor of our Marine Dive Rescue Unit. And he said, "Hey, Steve, I'm going to be sending up a couple more guys." I'm like, "For what?" Because this is our Marine Unit supervisor calling. He's county, not Sammamish. And he said, "To help Matt and Nate." I'm like, "What are Matt and Nate doing?" He's like, "They're clearing roads." I'm like, "With what?" He said, "Chainsaws." I had no idea that that was a thing that we carried in Sammamish and that you had to be certified in it. But Matt and Nate, I think for a couple of days, and they brought up fellow Marine Dive Rescue divers, so not Sammamish personnel, to assist with clearing roads. So that's just an added benefit that I was unaware of until it occurred. But that seems like a nice segue for Detective Nate Griard, our representative community engagement team. Matt Martin can't be here. He's at Ohio State for training.
Evening, Council. How are you? Yeah, so that was, like obviously there were needs that needed to be filled and it was kind of overwhelming. So Matt and I just went around, we found roads and trees that didn't have wires on them, but were blocking the roads, and we opened up neighborhoods. Because that was the big thing, is trying to, get emergency services to those communities or get people out. And it was pretty cool. People came out and helped us clear after we would cut stuff. But yeah, as far as community engagement, it's been since last May. I had to ask him because I thought it was like 2 years ago. It's been moving pretty fast, but been busy. Meetings with HOAs, presentations, tours, doing training. It's been really good. The program is going really well. They asked me for some anecdotes. I have one from Matt too, because he's not here, so I got him to give me a story. But I think last summer we have the Kalahani parade, and Matt and I were there, and a little boy came up to us. He had lost his family, and he recognized us because we had been to his school and done class visits and presentations. So it took us about 45 minutes to get out of him exactly what his parents look like, and we were able to walk through and find him. So there's stuff like that. Some of the other lower level stuff is I've been able to help community members that have problems that aren't necessarily a criminal level, so they don't necessarily rise to a police level, but they're maybe more of a civil thing, but they're just lost and they don't have any idea of where to go for resources or what to do with this problem. Hey, I'm having this issue with my landlord. Is this a police thing? Can I call suspicious on this? And kind of talk with them and take the time to line out, hey, these are kind of the options. This is what we can do. This is what we can't do. I would recommend you get this, or, I give them the resources that hopefully help them move on with and fix that problem, right? Make their lives a little better. And then we did with Councilmember Treen, we did the salmon release. That was pretty fun on Lake Sammamish. I've done trainings at the schools, helping them with their active shooter programs and their training their nurses. Nurses don't really need a lot of training in medical, but we do go over like stop the bleed type of scenarios. And then I work with, been working with some of the local Montessoris and the other preschools that are pretty well staffed as far as kids go. They have a lot of kids during the day. And sometimes when things happen at the big schools that affect them, whether it's emergency evacuation or something for whatever, they're not really sure what's going on. So helping them link them in so they have an idea and have a good plan about what's going on with that. And there's probably 100 other things. But, Matt's story, I don't want to forget. So we did an Aging Well resource fair, which I saw a couple of you at. That was really cool. That's something I hadn't done before. And they were talking about fraud. And Matt actually had a really good story where he had a teacher at Eastlake who was very upset and talked to him and said, hey, my husband's driving right now with $10,000 to go buy a bunch of Visa gift cards because we have to pay this warrant off. And Matt was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Was able to intercept and stop that from happening. So his influence at the school, right, he's kind of right there at the point of friction and can intervene on a lot of stuff like that, welfare checks, and do that type of stuff. So that was his story. And then I'll let the chief come back in because he's better at it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Detective Grier. All right, some updated crime data. What we have available right now is somewhat limited. WASPIC, which is the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police, won't actually release some of the data that I typically share with you. Year to year, it's normally around May when they provide that. So King County data, state of Washington data. I've been informed that it's now going to be July of this year when I'll get that. But what I do have for you is a comparison of 2024 to 2023 data. So in the category of crimes against property, which includes offenses such as burglary, fraud, vandalism, robbery, vehicle theft, and larceny, which is theft, we see a roughly 7% decrease in reported crime. That's specifically 46 offenses, which was a 66% decrease in commercial burglary and a 55% decrease in residential burglary, which I attribute to our enhanced patrols, some robust data analysis, and our efforts of the investigative unit. So Christine's team, Keith Gaffin and Detective Tracy Dodd. If crime trends continue as they have, we're still 2.5 times below the King County average and dropping. In the category of crimes against persons, which includes offenses such as homicide, assault, intimidation, and sex offenses, we see a roughly 5% increase in reported crimes, but that is just 7 offenses. For the purposes of this report, an intimidation offense is defined as to unlawfully place another person in reasonable fear of bodily harm through the use of threatening words and or other conduct, but without displaying a weapon or subjecting the victim to actual physical attack. And if crime trends continue as they have, we are still 5 times below the King County average. And I have a couple introductions for you. Sergeant Eric Wolf, after 30 years, retired last, Sergeant Wolf retired approaching summer. And Sergeant John Gemmett, seeking some career advancement, moved down to the King County Courthouse. So we've been, as sad as it was to see them go, we've been just blessed with 2 amazing new patrol supervisors. And the first is Sergeant Eric Kim. He was raised in California, actually born in California and raised in Bellevue. He attended Washington State University, where he graduated with a criminal justice degree and a minor in military science. He brings a wealth of knowledge as an 8-year police veteran, and he's still an active duty Army Reserve officer, specifically a captain. His previous assignments include working at Precinct 4 in Burien, the city of Carnation, and the Metro Transit police contract, where I work with him briefly. He was also previously a crisis negotiator and currently serves as a drone instructor pilot for the King County Sheriff's Office. While he's not serving the community, he's enjoying time with his family, often going camping. He's currently in an RV headed across the country and exploring the natural beauty of the Pacific Northwest. One thing I wanted to share about Sergeant Kim, and this is what I alluded to before with the bomb cyclone, when we opened the warming center here in City Hall, it became apparent to me that people were rapidly coming here on the premises, and we were not prepared for that. As a police department, we were not prepared for that. And the morning after, I just put out a request, kind of a plea to our supervisor team, and I said, I need somebody that can sit at City Hall throughout the entirety of the warming. So I guess we were open till the early evening to be here to provide calm, to provide resources, to be that first aid if needed. And with that same smile you see on his face right there, he's like, I got it, Chief. And he was there the entire weekend. And when I asked him what his experience was, he just said it was just a great opportunity to get the community that he now serves. So just a fantastic attitude, and we're so lucky to have him. But he's gone right now. He's enjoying some long overdue paternity leave. Sergeant Lisa Ford, born and raised in Queen City, Missouri, she brings a wealth of experience, dedication, and passion for law enforcement to our community. Inspired by family, friends, and her older brother, who's also a police officer, Lisa began her career in law enforcement with the Moberly Police Department in Missouri in December of 2013. During her time there, she served as a field training officer, a detective corporal, and patrol corporal. In 2020, Lisa made the move to the Pacific Northwest to embrace new opportunities for career growth and a better quality of life. She joined the King County Sheriff's Office in September of 2020 and became part of the Burien Police Department in February of 2021. What's remarkable about Lisa is the level of leadership that she demonstrates every day. She was actually named for the entirety of the King County Sheriff's Office, so all of unincorporated, all of our contract cities, she was named the Police Training Officer of the Year for 2024. And since day one, joining us here in the city of Sammamish, I see why. She's just a remarkable human being. Not long after she got here, I asked for a volunteer to take over our new onboarding program. And I've mentioned this before, but our onboarding program is an integration week. So when a new officer arrives in Sammamish, we want them to get to know Nate. You want to know what resources and responsibilities that Nate possesses as a community engagement officer. The second day of your integration week is with Matt Martin, getting to know our many, many schools, their layouts and needs. The third day is with one of our patrol officers learning geography, hotspots, places to pay attention to. And the fourth day is typically with our investigative unit. So we train them to understand what it is that our detective unit can do to support them in a patrol capacity. So when I asked for a volunteer to take on this program and to make sure that we have consistency throughout moving forward, it was Lisa that jumped at it instantly, and she's been doing a tremendous job now. So she's on her weekend right now, but when she's not here, she enjoys spending time with her dogs, hiking and exploring the Pacific Northwest. And finally, our community academy at long last is back up and running. We'll be starting in April. This time it'll be 8 weeks instead of 10. We're trying to condense the curriculum so we have a couple of longer Saturdays, probably with a skills and a classroom thing. But what you can expect is more emergency vehicle operations. That's learning to drive fast with lights and sirens, a use of force simulator, civilian oversight, a tour of the 911 call center, a visit to the crime lab. We can learn about fingerprints and DNA, DUI and drug recognition, and demonstrations with our SWAT team and K-9 unit. And registration is now open. I left some flyers on the table there, but if council would assist me, if you see an opportunity to talk about it, I'd sure appreciate it. We'd like to get enrollment at far greater numbers than last year, and we had great numbers last year. So, and that's my presentation. Any questions?
Thank you, Chief. Council, questions?
All right, who thought it was a good idea to let Matt and Nate have chainsaws? I don't know, that terrifies me. No, I just want to say thank you, and thanks to the folks on your staff who just continue to step up and serve our community. Appreciate it. But I will continue to harass them.
Certainly. We have a tremendous team, and you're welcome to. Thank you.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Lamb.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, and it's great. I show up to a lot of the city events, and I see Officer Griert there. It's great to see our police officers out and about. I did want to ask how the body cams are working. I know they were relatively new within the last year-ish.
It's my understanding they're working very well. There's been some minor updates with, I think powering them, keep maintaining power, but I don't actually carry one, so I can't speak to firsthand knowledge of some of the issues. I don't know, does Nate have any insight?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a body-worn camera instructor for the department, but the fielding is going good. I'd have to look at the numbers. I think everybody in Sammamish has one. It's a lot of data to capture, so guys have to come back to the precinct and then make sure they're uploading throughout the day. Otherwise, it takes hours to upload all the footage, depending on how many calls they're on. Car cameras are almost, there's a few. It's not all the cars have them, but most of the cars have them. They're linked, so if you draw the taser, if the lights come on the car, it's linked to the body camera, it activates it. There is the 30-second delay that you see on typical ones, so there'll be no audio for the first 30 seconds. There have been different positions on the vests. So the vests that most people wear have zippers on them, so sometimes the body cameras sit a little low. So there has been learning curves with individual officers based on where they like it, as far as what it's seen, and reviewing footage and stuff like that. But it's been a pretty good rollout. It's a pretty robust system, and when we do have one that goes down, we have replacements readily available. Mounting options, things like that break. We have all that available that we give to the officers as soon as it goes down. And if they show up to shift and their body-worn camera's not working, they have to go get a new one. So that's kind of, it's in the policy and all that type of stuff. So, but yeah, it's I don't have the exact numbers, but everybody that I've seen in Sammamish has body cameras.
Everyone has one,
yeah.
Thank you, Nate.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief, for your presentation. I just had a quick question about, it was great to see the statistics that you had posted and that were trending in the right direction. It just had occurred to me, do we have any data on like substance abuse issues in Sammamish? Do we know kind of where we are in relation to the rest of King County? Do we have a significant issue here, or, you know, just any information on that particular topic?
I'm certain that we have an issue here, but the data does not reflect it. A lot of what I hear is anecdotal, because there's still a stigma around substance abuse, and a lot of it is handled internally by families. But as far as in relation to Greater King County, I'm sure I can mine that data. I don't even think that would be very hard, but in looking at our police services report for the year, I don't think we registered one drug arrest last year. I'm not even sure we had one the year before. I mean, that is not our intent, is to arrest away drug issues. We want people to receive positive outcomes and treatment and get back on their feet. So, but I'm happy to look that up for you and provide it.
Councilmember Stewart, did you still?
Oh, no, did I?
Okay.
Sorry. Not able to operate the button.
Okay, anyone else on council? You, okay. Councilmember Gupta.
Thank you for the presentation. Do you have any highlights on traffic enforcement? Are there any concerns, any trends that we should be aware of?
I'm sorry, if you were
just anything that's stuck out over the past year.
Last year, I asked the traffic unit to run a like a red light camera study, and they went through about 5 years of data, and the data did not support any kind of need for red light cameras. In fact, they registered 8 collisions at 2 major intersections over that 5-year period. However, in the last few weeks, I've asked the traffic unit to focus their energy on school zones. And they are currently, I think they've already collected all the data. They analyzed 6 different schools. And I'm preparing a report for the city manager here in the next 2 weeks. So the data is done. It's a matter of just putting it together. And so I do expect to have some information for council sooner rather than later on what those results are, whether they warrant further look or not.
Great, thank you very much.
If there's no other council questions, I have a couple myself. So you mentioned enhanced patrols, I think. Could you tell me what an enhanced patrol is?
It can be, it's situational. So for instance, with the burglaries that we were experiencing, I called in a favor. I asked the canine unit, which is, at the time was probably a dozen dogs, to focus their training here in the city of Sammamish for 3 months. Whereas they would typically go out throughout the county and work in different environments, some urban, some rural. I said, I need the entire team here in the city of Sammamish to be a visible deterrent. And what we knew about this burglary crew is they were monitoring our social media. So we put out on our social media what we were doing and that the community of Sammamish could expect to see canines here. Don't worry, they're just training. When in reality, they were also responding to 911 calls in addition to doing their training, but just kind of being hyper-vigilant in the community. So that's not something I advertise when I'm typically doing it, but after the fact, that was our intent. So for 3 months, we had canines here all of the time. Every single night, we had canines operating here in the Sammamish area.
Thank you. And I was also wondering just on what your officer's experience has been with e-bikes in the community in terms of being a calming presence when someone's popping a wheelie. So would love to just hear what your experience has been with, and have you had the opportunity to talk to some of the kids to help them understand the safety issues?
I have not, but anecdotally, I've heard of our officers, and I saw an email this last summer that went back from our traffic unit reminding all of the officers what the RCW is that covers that, so we can stop and educate the youth when we see that happening. But I think I received maybe 1 or 2 emails of complaint on that topic in its entirety last year.
Okay.
Is there a more broad issue that?
We see it periodically. You'll start to see it maybe more as the weather gets better. But I would say that there's a lack of clarity or understanding of residents in terms of what's okay, not okay. Parents actually, take the governors off their kids' bikes and let them, go ahead and take off at a much higher rate of speed than they perhaps should. So it's intermittent. So it'll be just, I think it's just something that we're tracking. And from a council point of view, it's something that we're very concerned about because we're terrified someone's going to get hurt.
I will make sure to put something out on our social medias, and I'll talk to Matt Martin so we can start putting more stuff out in the schools on the topic as well, from an education standpoint.
I would love that.
Yeah, that's not a problem whatsoever.
That would be great. I was also just going to commend Nate, and he's my go-to guy for when I get a resident that's asking a question that I really don't have a response to because it's not a police matter. But it's something that if it's not handled well, it could escalate. And so I really appreciate you being so willing to go into the community, talking to HOAs, and just being open and approachable, so approachable. I'll ask one more question that's a follow-up to actually Councilmember O'Farrell's question earlier about substance use disorders in the community. You did a wonderful session earlier on One Pill Can Kill. Is there a need for that in the community again, or has anyone asked for that?
I have not received any requests, but is that not on our inventory for the year? Yeah.
We work with the DA when we can.
Right.
To get into schools when we can. So Matt and I work with the DA who puts on the presentation. It's their presentation. They do a great job of it. It's a lot of really helpful information. We work with them when we can and get them into venues that we can. Whether it's 45 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour and a half, we'll take what we can get. And so sometimes it goes really well, it's really well attended, and then sometimes it's not. And what I find is that if there's an incident, whether it's an OD or something like that, right? If we do a One Pill Can Kill, it's very well attended. Versus if we just do them regularly, they're less. But like I said, if there's 4 people that show up and they learn something, it's worthwhile. So there's actually a hidden in plain sight coming up on Thursday night over at Skyline. And so that's one thing, I'm double booked. So I got to send Deputy Ritt out to a reading thing at Creekside, and I got to go to the hidden in plain sight thing. But anyway, so they generally come to those. And then we were working with the YMCA here to try to set up some more of that. So that's always something that we're trying to do to let it come back around. And they do a really good job. They've brought in families of victims and mothers to tell their side of the story. It's really impactful. The DA always wants to get in front of kids and say, hey, let's show them this. And it's like sometimes they can't always get into the schools when they want. So our advice has always been if we can get to the parents and at least give them the knowledge of what they're looking at and what they're dealing with, because it ebbs and flows. And when you don't see the problem, you think, oh, it's gone away, but it's really just kind of
under the surface.
Yeah. So it's definitely something that it's a good presentation, but it's the DA's program. So we work with them, and they're really good about getting back to us and scheduling stuff and being available. Like I said, whether it's 20 minutes, whether it's 45 minutes, or anything. So.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to hear that it takes a crisis to drive attendance when it's something that we probably need regular education on all the time, because things change in that community all the time. It's not that's one place where it really, everything changes all the time there. If there's no other questions, we can let you guys take off and go mourn the loss of your fabulous Christine, as we all will. And thank you for the presentation. We appreciate it very much. And of course, for your service to the community.
Thank you, Council. Good evening.
Okay. We're now going to public hearings, and in this case, it's a continuation of a public hearing that was previously opened by implementing a 6% utility tax and use tax on brokered natural gas. We will start with a presentation by Vicki Carlson. Thank you.
So good evening. For the record, Vicki Carlson, Finance Director. So as the Mayor stated, tonight is a continuation of the public hearing for the utility tax and review of the enabling legislation. So I want to remind everyone why we're here tonight and talking about implementing a utility tax. So the city's general fund budget is structurally imbalanced, meaning that ongoing revenues are not paying for ongoing expenditures. The lines officially crossed this year, and we knew this point was coming, right? This is not new information. We have to have new ways of paying for existing services, or existing services are going to be reduced or go eliminated. And I'll address this in some later slides. So back in 2022, Council had provided direction to staff to maintain levels of service and hold staff harmless. And this was taken into consideration when the budget was drafted for the current biennium. In response to the structural imbalance that was identified a few years ago, a community task force was pulled together and validated that the imbalance does exist. The task force presented a recommended approach to Council back in 2023, and that recommendation was a three-phased approach. So the first phase was the city to implement a reduction in general fund budgets. We did that to the tune of $8.9 million. The second phase, which requires council action, is to implement a utility tax. And the third phase was voter action, and the recommended approach was the Metropolitan Park District. These three phases together are needed to attain fiscal sustainability and maintain the same levels of service. So this is a slide that's been shown a number of times before, and it shows that the lines do cross this year. We are budgeted to use about $800,000 in existing fund balance this year and about $5.5 million next year to fund ongoing expenditures. It is not a best practice to use one-time funds to pay for ongoing expenses, nor is it sustainable, and so action is needed to course correct now. So this slide shows examples of public-facing city services that are provided by our departments and directly benefit our community. Most of these services are provided by staff, and a few of them through a contract for service. If you think back to the four categories of services that we discussed at the retreat, the last two buckets, many of these services fall into those last two buckets, which is the not required but highly valued, or need to have but we can adjust the level of service buckets. Oops. So these three services on this slide are contracted services that realistically we really can't control the cost for. Police and fire together are the largest component of our general fund budget, and then personnel cost right below that. Police and fire account for about 37% of our general fund, and as a reminder, the police budget increased 7% in 2025 over the 2024 budget, and fire increased 15%. A much greater increase for these two services than the 1% increase in property tax revenue. And if you might remember, property tax revenue is about 62% of our budget, and that 1% growth equals about $300,000 in revenue. So this is a list of the community members that participated in the Fiscal Sustainability Task Force. One of the questions that they were asked was if they agreed that a structural imbalance existed, and the answer was yes. They looked at a variety of options, including reducing level of services and a variety of funding options to maintain existing levels of service, and their recommendation was the three-phase or three-legged stool approach. So one of the task force guiding principles was to maintain service levels to the fullest extent possible, as the community places a high value on services that the city provides. This was confirmed through a community survey that was conducted last year, and the survey showed the residents rated Sammamish higher than comparison cities on a number of topics. Those are listed on this slide. And again, many of these fall into the highly valued services, but not legally required. So again, you've seen this slide. This is the three-phase or three-legged stool approach to addressing the structural imbalance. Step one was for the city to reduce expenditures in the general fund before raising revenue. The task was to reduce $1 million over 3 years starting in 2025, and staff has reduced the budget $8.9 million, which goes well beyond the task force recommendation. The second phase, which is here tonight, is the implementation of a utility tax starting next year. And then since the first two phases alone won't solve the structural imbalance, a third phase is necessary, and that's the voter-approved measure. And again, the recommendation was the Metropolitan Park District. So to recap the city's responsibility, or phase one, in 2024, through a mid-biennium amendment, budget reductions totaled $2.4 million. And then as the budget was drafted for the current biennium, an additional $6.5 million was reduced. And this slide lists the high-level details of what was reduced. The cost-saving measures were applied to all departments. They're listed on this slide. The what-ifs and contingencies were part of both the 2024 mid-buy reductions and part of the reductions that occurred for this current biennium. We've also reduced the total number of seasonal positions, restricted and reduced training budgets, reduced office supplies and meal expenses, and limited overtime for staff that is overtime eligible. And we added and then increased the vacancy savings for staff as well as the police department for those vacancies. If the budget reductions had not been done, our general fund expenditure budget would be about $4.5 million higher on an annualized basis, and our budget cap would be substantially higher. Looking at projections for 2030, if we had done nothing, our projected gap between ongoing revenues and ongoing expenditures would have been over $20 million. So today, we are at a crossroad. We either need to increase revenue if we want to maintain the same level of services, or eliminate and reduce services. The blue box on the left are the programs that are not required but are highly valued by our community. These are the services that would be eliminated. The green box on the right, these are the services that we are required to provide, and we would reduce costs by adjusting down these levels of service. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to the city manager, because I believe Scott has some comments.
Thank you, Vicki. Council, I want to highlight this particular slide because I want to be clear about that this is not something where we've just chosen the easiest things. These are the things that are not required, but I think we can all agree are very highly valued. And we want to be clear about this because each of these components are, there are people doing the work. And so when we look at these, it's not just the service that's provided, it's those that are providing the service on top of that. And from my humble estimation, I think our staff does a phenomenal job providing these services, and I think that it is worth the value for continuing to fund those services and have those staff provide that. In terms of the adjustable level of service, I know none of these are things that people would want to do, but the blue box alone is not enough. We would have to dip down into these pieces that are adjustable. And as Vicki stated earlier, police and fire are really not adjustable in a meaningful way. I don't think that the community would support adjusting down our response times for either police or fire. And so from our perspective, those are really not on the table. And so we just want to be clear with the community about what it looks like in terms of what we would or would not be able to continue to fund without new revenue. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Vicki.
Okay, so this is the estimate of what a utility tax would generate broken down by the type of utility. There's been questions as to how much an increase would generate if utilities increase their rates. So just as an example for illustrative purposes, if you look at the $3.6 million the utility tax revenue for water and sewer, this is all of the water sewer providers that are in the city. If you were to apply a 7% increase, it would generate an additional $250,000 in revenue. That is less than the increase we get with a 1% property tax, which equates to about $300,000. So this graph shows how the utility tax impacts our ongoing revenues. You can see that it's a short-term fix and we go upside down again in 2029. The additional revenue generated in 2026 through 2028 would be used to close the gap that occurs starting again in 2029 until the MPD could be voted on. And this assumes a few things, right? It assumes that we do a vote in 2028. It assumes that the vote is positive, and it assumes that the MPD starts generating its own revenue as early as 2030. That's the earliest year an MPD could see tax revenue. So the increase these next 3 years gets us through that, again, assuming all stars align. And if it doesn't, this gives us that cushion to go further out. So this is recapping the draft utility tax legislation. It is for 6% on all utilities. It does include a low-income rebate program. And the legislation you have before you tonight has been updated to remove the sections that would be included in the administrative rules. And you'll see those later on this year because they do have to be adopted prior to the start of the utility tax. So the utility tax has been discussed as a revenue option since at least July of 2023. The dates on this slide are all touches with council and the public on the instructional imbalance and the task force recommendation for the utility tax. And then finally, this is the proposed schedule for the public hearing to continue through March 18th, at which time the hearing would close and the vote to adopt the tax would be taken. And at this point, this ends my presentation, and I'll turn it back over to the mayor to continue the public hearing.
Thank you. Are there clarifying questions the council needs to ask right now? And if not, we'll move to public comment.
Yeah, really quickly.
Yes.
And I think, I don't know if we asked this before, so I apologize. Would this apply to internet services? Is there a utility tax on internet services?
I'm drawing a complete blank. Let me get back to you on that. Okay. There's a couple of services that are, let me get back to you.
Great, no problem. And then same theme, I know it says cables included. What about streaming services?
Same thing. I'll get back to you on both of those.
Perfect.
I don't want to give an incorrect answer.
No, I appreciate that. And then on the future graph of the revenue, does that include any estimates for utility rate increases over that period of time?
So I have built in a 3% increase. Whether that's truly realizable or not, we won't know until we actually start collecting the revenue.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lamb.
For the future one, does it include an estimate for fire and police increases?
Yes, for our full financial projections, we did include increases for police and fire, but again, they're estimates, and until we get updated contracts, we don't know what those increases are.
What is the estimate? Is like a percentage?
I believe it was 5% that we put into the forecast, but let me verify that for you.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no further clarifying questions, we'll move to public comment. First up will be Gregory Kipp.
Good evening, Council. My name is Gregory Kipp. I live at 3011 211th Avenue Northeast in Sammamish. 20-year resident, moved here in 2024 after raising our kids down in Issaquah. So pretty familiar with the area and the growth that this region has experienced. I am currently retired, and for what it's worth, I'm living on a fixed income, so it's somewhat relevant. This issue is somewhat relevant to me. I'm here in support of the proposed utility tax. I've read reports from the Fiscal Sustainability Task Force, and the most recent fiscal sustainability update. And I concur that revenues are in no way going to match the fiscal needs for the city of Sammamish, especially if we are going to in any way continue to enjoy the level of services that we currently experience, which I believe are very good. Thank you very much, all of you, for that. I also want to commend the city for the 2-year effort that you've undertaken to address this issue, starting with the establishment of the task force and following up with implementing the initial set of recommendations for budget reductions. You went far beyond what the recommendations were from the task force. Those are not easy decisions to make, nor easy cuts to make. Additionally, in crafting your budget for 2025 and 26, if I understand correctly, just less than a 1% increase from the previous biennial budget. Pretty amazing in these inflationary times. So you as a council have, and the city managers, city staff have kind of buckled down and figured out what you can do with existing expenditures to reduce the impact of the fiscal, I'll call it a crisis situation that you've got. So yet with all of those reductions, city expenses are outpacing the revenues that you're going to have. I'm most concerned about things like deferred maintenance on your infrastructure, the roads, the parks, the trails, city facilities. If those aren't addressed in a timely manner, they're going to be a lot more expensive to address in the long term, at which time you're going to have to find more revenues anyway. So delaying those sorts of expenditures is not a smart thing. I guess I'm over time. I'm sorry. Additionally, reduced services. I'm concerned about reduced services. So
I need to cut you off here. I'm sorry.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
But thank you very much.
Support.
Eddie Stevens. Nope, we're out. Okay. Tapping out. And then we've got, well, and Wally signed up on the wrong form. So, which explains why he was so confused. So is there anybody in the room that would like to do 3 minutes? And if not, we will go to online.
Pre-registered public hearing commenters, if you'd like to comment, please raise your hand online. Mr. Harmon? You're currently muted, Mr. Harmon.
Okay. So you can see me. Okay, I'm Tom Harmon. I think sent you some written comments earlier. I've lived on the plateau since 1987, and I'm currently a water commissioner for 25 years. So I know what you're going through. I go through it with our staff, and setting water rates and stuff. And I'm also on a King County committee that's trying to work on sewer rates. So I really know what you're going through, and I enjoyed the presentation. The issue that I have, and I'm speaking as a person, not as a commissioner, that I'm finding that being retired and living on Social Security checks is, it gets to be a little bit of tough times, and the increase in property taxes is starting to hurt. And of course, what I'm looking for and hoping for is maybe some kind of a lower tax rate for water and sewer and possibly electricity that can help seniors out, because I don't want to be in a situation where I have to move because I can't afford to live here anymore. And so that's the main issue I have, and I certainly understand what you have to do to make this a fine city, and I go along with that. The possibility of maybe a lower rate for water and sewer, possibly, or at least exempted. I use the example of groceries not having sales tax, and that was put in to help people out a little bit. So that's all the comments that I have, but I hope that it causes some interest, and hopefully we can have either a lower rate or maybe take it off water. I looked at water and sewer was a big amount, so I think that taking it off might be difficult, but every little bit helps. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Mary
Hello.
Wichter.
Yeah, hello, this is Mary Wichter. I wanted to speak again on the sales tax, excuse me, the utility tax. I think the city's gone on long enough with 85% single-family homes and 15% other types of dwellings. That it's gotten to the point it is too expensive. We literally can't do it. So that you're forced to do the utility tax, and doing it at 6%, I think makes sense administratively, and just see what you get. But I will say that I've also attended Sammamish Plateau Water and Sewer District meetings. You just heard from Tom Harmon personally. He is one of the water commissioners. And they also have concerns like, in order to have enough water for all these single family homes with lawns for watering, they have to put in an 8 million gallon tank, which was at their last meeting on Monday. And to do that, it's about $28.4 million. Because what they're trying to do is meet really high water needs during the summer and the lower winter needs, and they need to have the additional storage. If we had a different set of housing mix where people were multifamily homes or stacked units or stacked flats or condominiums, you would find out that they just don't either have the yards or use the water, so you'd be able to bring that down. So because we've grown really lopsided with single family homes, and we continue to be, even the water services are being affected. The other thing on the water utility rate, and I think Tom made some good comments, Tom Harmon, is that there is some PFAS, which is in the water in a couple places, and they're having to spend about 18 to 20 million on one plant so that can be treated, and they have about another 6 million that would need to be due. So you're going to see that the water and sewer rates are going to have to rise. So if we had growth and there were more units, it would be spread out among more people. And if they're the type where you have a town center and clustering, that would also be better. And then I thought that the task force did a really great job. I've heard the individuals speak. They've been in front of council a number of times. But the one thing they weren't allowed to look at was to see if we had a functional town center, what that would do. And if we do have a functional town center where we have smaller units, integrated walking, we don't have dead end cul-de-sacs, people might not even have cars or just want to have one car. They're walking along the schools corridor to get to the schools and activities and the shopping that's there. You just don't have all the cars and the driving. So I know there's a big concern over it. I don't think the city has a choice not to do it. I would encourage you not to raise the water and sewer more, because their own rates are going to go up and you're going to get a higher percent of that. And I think it's something that has to be done. And I think if we could find a way to move forward with town center and let it be what it really can be, that we won't find out we didn't allow it or built the wrong stuff and have to rip it down. Because there are other cities that don't have an area and they have to remove development in order to be able to put their town center. And as is, I think ours will be the smallest town center on the whole east side. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will now promote the third commenter. Paul Stickney.
Good evening, City Council. Paul Stickney, Sammamish. Appreciated Tom Harmon's and Mary's comments. I heard all the fiscal sustainability task force meetings, and one thing that was not really gotten into is some of the reasoning and the rationale of why we are here where we are, which I'm going to go into in a sec, not to cast any stones, but to sort of be mindful of how things have progressed, and there really is a need for revenue. And I know you're going to expect me to say it, but it's authentic and genuine. If we start meeting market rate needs, especially under $1.5 million, alongside affordable housing needs, mostly in centers, we can really raise revenue and increase our long-term fiscal strength. A couple points that have happened over 10 to 12 years that I've been attending meetings. These aren't negative, they're just facts. Over the course of the last 7, biennial budget cycles, the FTE count has gone up about 48% on a constant per 1,000 resident metric. The size of the budget, its overall magnitude, adjusted for inflation now, has risen about 28% in that same time frame. Take a look at some of the other larger taxes that have occurred over the last 7-8 years. Our stormwater fee has gone up 220% for homeowners in the last 7 years, from about $225 to $475. Taxes had roughly 10 years of banked capacity and 1% that had been taken. That adds another 4 or 5 million or 250-ish to a household. And these two taxes combined now, both are looking at some 700 to 800 per person. Also on the expense side, in the 2019 and 2020 budget, roughly 10 million of capital and operational contingencies were wiped out and haven't come back. For many, many years, money from the general fund was put into projects, and according to something from the finance department I have, that hasn't happened from 2015 to 2019. I'm not sure what's happened over the last couple years. And there is a big capital need that needs to be addressed. And Tom and the first speaker, Greg Kipp, who talked about aging infrastructure, absolutely correct. So there's many dimensions in play to contemplate both revenue and expenses in making this choice. Appreciate the chance to speak.
Thank you.
That's all for public comment. Again, to speak at a public hearing remotely, pre-registration by 5 p.m. the day of the meeting at cityclerk@sammamish.us. Thank you.
Thank you. And Vicki, I believe you have some clarification for us.
Yes, if I can make sure the microphone is on. So I apologize. I can't believe I blanked earlier. But yes, I can actually answer the question on internet and broadcast TV. They are not taxable by law. So internet is not subject to the tax, and neither is broadcast satellite TV. And I did have a chance to look. We plugged in 5% increases for both police and fire as part of our long-term financial forecast.
Thank you for that update.
Yes.
I turn myself off. The public hearing will continue until March 18th, at which time we will close the public hearing. So there is lots of opportunity for the public to get engaged and involved and to deliver public comment to us and feedback. We try really hard to respond to everybody that sends in their feedback. So, please keep those cards and letters coming. And next, we will move on to unfinished business. In specific, establishing policies relating to the affordable housing fee in lieu as required by SMC 21.10, mandatory affordable housing program. So we will be having David Pyle and Evan Fisher here to help us out.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. David Pyle, Department of Community Development. After the Council heard this topic on 2 separate occasions earlier this year, we're here for finally consideration of 2 resolutions. Evan Fisher will be providing a brief presentation once he's promoted, and we will then turn it over to the Council for final discussion and consideration of 2 resolutions related to implementation of the city's already in effect affordable housing, inclusionary affordable housing requirement. Evan, there he is. Welcome,
hey
Evan. We can.
Thanks. Give me just 1 second to get the screens organized here. Share screen. Great. Thank you, David, and thank you, Council. It's nice to be here with you virtually tonight to continue the discussion about the affordable housing fee. Tonight's meeting is part 3 of 3 to implement the city's affordable housing in lieu fee as part of the new mandatory affordable housing program. On January 14th, Council received an introductory presentation to discuss aspects of the program and provided staff with feedback. On February 18th, staff presented its recommendation based on the feedback heard in January and asked the Council for any further direction or edits. Tonight, Council will be considering approval of 2 resolutions to formally implement the affordable housing fee in lieu. The first is to set the fee and the fund's policies, and the second is to add the fee to the city's fee schedule. As a reminder, this is one of the first steps the city is taking to implement the 2024 Comprehensive Plan, particularly Housing Policy 3.6, which directs the city to require or incentivize affordable housing through an inclusionary zoning program. This is accomplished through new regulations adopted by the City Council in December, which are now in effect in Chapter 2110 of the Sammamish Municipal Code. 2110 requires that at least 10% of all new housing developed to be affordable at 80% AMI, and that affordability requirements may be met either by building affordable units or paying a fee in lieu. On February 18th, staff presented the proposed policy language that would establish the fee in lieu program. One of the included policy statements would have established that any unspent funds that have matured for 5 years be rolled into Arch's Regional Housing Trust Fund. The Council provided direction that they would like to retain the discretion to allocate any unspent funds to the Arch Housing Trust Fund rather than having funds transfer automatically after a certain period of time. Based on this feedback, staff have removed the 5-year rolling fund transfer and instead make it clear in the policy language that the City Council may consider transferring any or all unspent funds after receiving Arch's annual report. Now I'll just quickly summarize the Affordable Housing Fund policies. Since the February meeting, staff have incorporated the Council's feedback and had legal review the policies. Legal provided recommendations that have also been incorporated that clarified how and when funds would be distributed. The first policy states the fee shall be determined using the model developed by Arch. As a reminder, this model uses local housing data and market conditions to determine the fee on a square foot basis. The model was reviewed by the city's economic consultant, Kidder Matthews, who found the model and its assumptions to be sound. The second policy states that the City Council has the discretion to apply a market factor to reduce the fee amount to be responsive to local market conditions. Following a recommendation from legal, staff have added that this will be done in collaboration with Arch and the city staff and receive third-party review. The third policy states that the fund shall be managed by Arch, taking advantage of their existing resources and infrastructure, and that funds shall be distributed only upon the direction of the City Council. The next policy states the funds shall be first used for affordable housing projects within Sammamish. Arch may recommend regional projects, however, if no local projects exist, and the Council shall determine if the regional projects are supported. The fifth policy states that ARCH will provide an annual progress report on fund spending, projects funded, and potential projects. At this time, the council may consider transferring any or all unspent funds to the ARCH Housing Trust Fund to support regional projects. Lastly, staff will also provide an annual report on the local housing market with a focus on levels of affordability of new housing units. This report will meet the GMA's reporting requirements and help determine if a market factor or changes to the affordable housing program should be considered to respond to the local market. Additionally, the report will identify alternative compliance methods, including partnerships, to support affordable housing consistent with the regional planning framework. The idea here is that the city would like to track how its funds may be supporting the development of regional affordable housing in an effort to receive credit towards our affordable housing targets. As you'll recall, the city's affordable housing in lieu fee is $34.45 per square foot and will be included in the 2024 fee schedule within the planning section. And as just a reminder, it is based on ARCH's model, which has been reviewed by a third party. During the February meeting, the council also expressed interest in revisiting portions of Chapter 2110, particularly the square footage exemptions for instances when a structure are being rebuilt as a result of an unexpected loss, and the rounding threshold for when a unit must be built versus when a fee would be paid. I'll note that the city has received public comment from the building community supporting an effort to fine-tune these criteria and exemptions to better respond to market conditions and improve project feasibility. Staff will be reviewing these items with the Planning Commission on March 6th and will bring forward the Commission's recommendation later this year. This brings us to the action items, two motions for the council's consideration. The first would be a resolution establishing the policies, and then the second, as stated earlier, would be amending the city's master fee schedule to add the affordable housing in lieu fee. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mayor.
Thank you. We have a motion on the table. No, we have it technically here, but just before we kick off, does anybody have any questions right now on the presentation? If not, would somebody, okay. There we go. Councilmembers Gupta.
Thank you. Would you, in the policy, it mentioned third-party review of the market factor. Could you tell us what that would look like?
I'd be happy to jump in there. So basically, we would want to make sure that any data that is indicating that the fee itself might have an impact on housing applications, new housing being built in the city, we would want to make sure that the modeling done by ARCH is also reviewed by a third party, just like we did here. We want to be sure. So what would happen is we would first engage ARCH and identify, first of all, we would take, I guess, I'll back it up a second, I apologize. The first step would be preparing our annual report, which would outline, the number of housing applications we're receiving, the types of housing we're seeing built, and if we're seeing numbers fall, that would be pause for us to visit what reasonable measures might need to be applied. That's part of the process in reporting to the state. Department of Commerce, requires that we provide a report out at the end of every year, and we will be identifying sort of how our development regulations are working or not working. So if the numbers are falling and we're not seeing the numbers that we expected as part of our comprehensive plan process and the forecast that we have, what we would do is we would engage ARCH and explore what different options we have to turn the dial. Do we need to apply a catalyst? Do we need to temporarily suspend the fee? Do we need to temporarily reduce the fee? Do we need to permanently reduce the fee? We would bring that back to the council for feedback. We would then, upon final recommendation, bring in the third-party economists, similar to the work we had done by Kidder, who would then assess the numbers and identify how that adjusted fee or a catalyst approach, if you will, would apply to the bottom line. If you recall, the pro forma sheets that they provided as part of the presentation identified how all of the costs of development stack up and what the anticipated return on investment would be for a development. And there's a certain no-go zone. I think it was 15% return was where they placed it. And what we would be doing is assessing based on new market conditions whether or not we feel the fee is a barrier and whether or not the adjustment to the fee that we're making through the market factor or the catalyst is going to be effective. Hopefully that long explanation finally got to the punchline.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Sorry, Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. Actually, building on that, I'm wondering as we implement this, because it's all brand new, if we could get at least even an informal update more frequently than once a year, just because we don't know if this is going to encourage more affordable units or just stifle all development altogether, right? And I think taking more frequent looks in the early days and making adjustments might be better. And I'm not necessarily dictating the frequency, but I'm wondering, Mr. City Manager, if that's something we could consider just as we implement this, because we don't want it to have the opposite effect, if that's possible. And then if I understand what you're recommending is that we go ahead and approve things now, you're going to talk to the Planning Commission, and you may come back with a recommendation for us to make some adjustments to the minimum size. Is that how I'm understanding this?
So Title 2110, or I guess SMC 2110 is already in place. We did pass that on December 10th of 2024. The inclusionary affordable housing requirements are already in place, and they do already include exemption thresholds, such as units smaller than 1,000 square feet. What we have heard from the development community since then is that we can't quite build a 3-bedroom townhome unit or stack flat unit or a smaller home, if you will, which is something that they understood us to be wanting them to build, was a 3-bedroom unit that could accommodate a small family, but that is just by simple square footage more affordable. They have indicated that a 1,500 square foot floor plan is something that is attainable. Not only that, but they're seeing a market demand for 2-bedroom units plus a flex space. So essentially a 3-bedroom unit, if you will, but that they're calling it a 2-bedroom and then allowing that office space or that sort of adaptable space to however a family would choose to use it. So that is a comment we take seriously, and we're going to be bringing that to the Planning Commission, but that would result in amending the code that's already in place.
So I guess my question is, you have 2 motions that you would like us to make, and I'm confused how these motions relate to the additional work that's happening with the Planning Commission. That's all I want to know.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So neither of these motions would influence that. These are simply resolutions, not ordinances setting code, if you will.
Okay.
These are resolutions setting policy.
Gotcha.
So now that we have the fee in lieu in place, we want to know what to do with the money once we collect it.
I see. Okay, thank you.
And we want to know what that fee should be, because that is set by fee schedule.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much. And then this is kind of random, but I was asked this earlier today. Do we have fees, or would this apply if someone wanted to expand an existing home? So if I had a, 2,500 square foot home and I wanted to add another 1,500 square feet, would any kind of fees be applicable here?
So this would not apply to that currently.
Okay.
That will be a topic of discussion with the Planning Commission,
Of course
because
you're on top of it.
we've heard that, and we did hear it tonight as well in public comment.
Yep.
I want to also highlight that this program presents not only a stick but a carrot, right? It's trying to help guide the type of housing that we see built. We can open up our regulations to allow middle housing like we're required to under HB 1110. But This also, the code that's in place and the fee in lieu that's in place, if you set the exemptions right, helps drive builders to a certain size unit that we think is missing from the product that's being delivered to the community. And we are hearing over and over again from community members that they really want. So this is one of the tools in the toolkit to get there. You open up the regulations, make it easier, but then you also try to influence and guide by way of these additional components.
Love it. Carrots, sticks, and partnerships. I love that. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Lamb.
Thanks, David. I understand Councilmember Stewart when she was talking about wanting to know what's happening in the housing market and having a yearly update. I don't know if I need something as formal as that, but I do appreciate when you come in and you talk about what's going on. Like, I think you mentioned not too long ago that there's been an increase in interest in duplexes. So to me, that's a good pulse check. Just in general interest. So perhaps, when you give updates, that you could just provide information like that.
Yeah, I'll definitely work with the city manager to identify how to provide, structured updates. Just speaking anecdotally, in the permit center world, we've seen a lot of interest in middle housing since we adopted our regulations. We don't have any takers yet, but we have seen significant interest on the part of existing property owners here in the city who are thinking about maybe adding something for their children. They could have them move back, maybe building accessory dwelling units that are now easier to build. And people are waking up to the fact that there is some flexibility in these rules that can help them accommodate different uses on their property that were not previously allowed.
Okay. Can you go to the slide that had the 3 bullet points for the Planning Commission? The rounding threshold for when a unit is required versus a fee paid, I thought it was they were required to pay for a fractional unit.
Yeah, so this is, when we were drafting all this, the red lines and strike drafts are quite challenging to work through. We had 2 different versions we were working off of, and we feel like we want to revisit this and just talk through it. So the issue that happened is the way the code is now written after all the red line strike draft is removed is you are required to pay a fee in lieu if you're building, or if it results in a partial unit, or excuse me, a fractional unit of 0.1 to 0.4, right? So if you're building, say, a 4-lot short plat, then you get 0.4 is your fractional unit count. You're required to pay a fee in lieu for the total amount of square footage that you're building in that project. But if you're building a 5-lot short plat, you're not rounding anymore. You're required to build a whole unit. And that holds true for a 6-lot, 7-lot, 8-lot, and 9-lot short plat up until 10, where you're required to build 9 market units and 1 affordable unit, right? So the challenge becomes is that the burden, and I don't, I hear it from the building community, so I mean this, the burden of building an affordable unit spread across 5 units versus spread across 10 units is very different. And what we want to explore with the Planning Commission is if we should allow fractional unit fee in lieu as an option all the way up through 9 units, because then that would result in 0.9, right? Because not every project's land costs are the same. Not every project is the same typology of construction. So we want to offer, and maybe the Planning Commission would land on if you're building a point, you end up in something less than 0.5, you're required to pay the fee. If you're over 0.5 up to however many, then up to 1 or 1.0 as your unit, then you're given the option of paying the fee or building the unit. But anything over 1, you're required to build that unit. But then when you get to 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, right, it goes up again. So what our concern is that with the fractional units, the way they're set and the rounding, is that it creates this disproportionate burden on the projects that are 5 lots, 6 lots, 7 lot, right? And as you go up in scale, then the burden gets smaller as it's spread across the units. hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah.
We just want to revisit this and make sure we've got it right. And this is a good opportunity to do so. We did set the docket in order to accommodate things like this.
Great, thanks for clarifying.
Council, additional questions?
I'll make a motion if there aren't any.
I would entertain a motion. But we might need to see the motion slide again. There we go. Thank you.
Okay, you ready? Okay. I move to approve a resolution establishing policies relating to the affordable housing fee in lieu as required by SMC 2110 mandatory affordable housing program.
Second?
It's been first and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 6-1. Would someone like to make the second? Deputy Mayor Lamb.
I motion to approve a resolution amending the city's master fee schedule to add the affordable housing in lieu fee as required by SMC 21.10 mandatory affordable housing program.
Second.
It's been first and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
6-1 carries. So thank you. Both have passed.
Thank you. And we'll try our best to continuously report back on progress that we see with the newer types of housing that we're really hopeful will start to be built in the community.
Well, we're very encouraged to hear this, David. It's exciting to hear that the hard work is actually paying off in terms of, some kind of activity and action. So it's terrific. You get to still stay on the hot seat along with Evan, because we'll be going into the second piece of unfinished business with amending resolution R2024-1075, the city's master fee schedule to add the affordable housing in lieu fee. Wait, I just did it. No. Never mind. I'm now back on my own schedule. So we're going to consent item number 5, and Councilmember Treen will be guiding us as to why he pulled it.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So just wanted to ask the council if we could table this until the March 18th meeting. This item was just put into the agenda pack on Friday. And if looking through the resolutions, whereases, the number of laws and the number of I see some challenges that may even need some legal questions that would need to be answered. And there's some 8 conditions of evidence that are not discussed. And so I'd like to look at that and then how each of the laws are being applied and or would be implemented at the time of approval. And then what some of those requirements by our laws, what that actually really means and what the consequences of those or the unintended consequences are. And so none of those, I didn't even have a chance this weekend to even look at this until sometime yesterday. And then I was just like, that's too much information to have to, just reading through the hearing examiner's whatever that was, 59 pages of that thing. And I actually remember reading it the first time. And now I'm looking at it, okay, how many changes are being made and amendments are being made to this? And subsequently, what is the outcome of 6th because of the amendments that we're making? And what's the consequences to the taxpayers when it comes to that? So there is a whole bunch of information in here that's either I'm not privy to, and so I have a lot of questions. And then I think there's actually I'm just curious as to what the risk is to the city too. So to protect the city, I would ask that we table this until the 18th, until I have time to meet with Carrie Sands and with David Pyle to get some of the answers to this.
So point of order about Is this a motion that you're making to
Yeah, I'm
table
making it,
this?
well, I want to make, I'm asking that, yeah, how about first, instead of making a motion yet, I just see if there's interest to table this to allow me to have that time. If there's no interest to table it by any one of my fellow council members, then I'm not making a motion to embarrass us.
I think some council members here have questions that we'd like to get addressed in terms of what is the impact of delaying on this? Because that's not clear to me at all. If all the conditions have been met, is there any reason to delay?
So there's a couple things going on here, right? Okay. The first is that under our code, which is different than other cities, you cannot apply for building permits until the property, the real tax parcels have been created. So applicants, builders, commonly in other cities are able to go in and apply for building permits and start the process of having those plans be reviewed, which takes time. But in this case, here in Sammamish, we first have to have a final plat recorded before they can then begin the process of building permit review. We've had some workarounds to help move it along, but they still cannot formally apply for building permits until the final plat has been recorded and the real property parcels created. So that's one issue. A delay would result in a delay in their progress. There are ramifications that go along with that. The other part of it is that Washington state law, RCW 5817, is very specific about final plats. That really the work of a project goes into the preliminary subdivision process, where there's a hearing examiner who reviews the project to verify if it's designed in accordance with state law. Then infrastructure is either built or bonded. In this case, they've built some, they've bonded some, that then allows them to move to final plat. The review of final plat by the council is largely pro forma, ceremonial, if you will. The council's not in a discretionary position to change the design, change the project. If they meet the conditions of approval that are presented by the hearing examiner's decision on preliminary subdivision, then the council, according to state law, shall take action to approve the final subdivision, the final plat. Note that there's some confusing lingo here. A plat is simply a drawing. It is the piece of paper that gets recorded at the assessor's office to create the parcels. A subdivision is the actual process by which you're dividing the land. So we sometimes use those interchangeably. Just wanted to clarify that. The state legislature actually changed the process back in 2017 under, there was, I just had this up earlier, I was doing some research. It was, Senate Bill 5674 from 2017, which changed state law to allow the council to, the legislative body to assign a designee that's not the legislative body to review final subdivisions, final plats, and approve them. Many cities, such as the city of Bellevue, city of Auburn, the city of Kirkland, and others, the city of Shoreline, have changed their processes so the council is no longer in the business of review of final plats. We have queued that up for Planning Commission consideration. They will be reviewing that and discussing that on Thursday. And of course, it's up to all of you to choose that. One of the challenges that we have, because it is ceremonial, pro forma, if you will, on the part of the council and not discretionary, is that a delay could result in something like a delay damages claim on the part of the building community, because we are delaying their ability to move forward Further, RCW 5817 also dictates that a city shall, upon receipt of a final subdivision application, take action to approve or deny that final subdivision within 30 days of receipt of the application. So there is a very narrow timeline by which a city is given the ability to take action. Subdivisions are kind of like the holy grail of land use law. They're given a lot of protection under state law, and cities have limited ability to influence or change the process aside from what is dictated by the state. I don't know if our legal counsel here wants to validate what I said, but that's my lived experience in the years I've been doing this.
Briefly, Mayor and Council, if I may supplement, very briefly. I do agree with everything Director Pyle just stated. He's correct that the heavy lift happens at the preliminary approval stage. The final approval is ministerial. You use the term pro forma, but it's a ministerial act. I just want everyone to know the resolution that we're talking about appears in your packet at pages 52 and 53. It's a 2-page resolution. I did collaborate with the team in DCD to prepare it. I have reviewed it, and I can, help attest that the statements made in this resolution are accurate and correct. And in fact, this particular plat has received so much more scrutiny than the average plat because, as you know, it's been the subject of multiple public hearings and multiple development agreements. So I just want to remind the council about that, and that's captured in the whereas recital at the bottom of page 52 in your packet. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Other questions? Okay, Councilmember Treen. Oh, sorry.
No, I mean, my thing's on. I just had a... Yes, sorry. I will call on myself. I think I am a little confused because the preliminary was done like 5.5 years ago, submitted? 4.5 years ago?
2019.
2019. Oh, okay. And then we have the hearing examiner decision was almost 3 years ago. Is that correct? Okay. So I think what I'm confused about is what 14 days would do. I'm a little confused on like what that would offer you if we've already had between 3 to 5 years.
Well, it's because of all the changes that have happened since, and the last change was in January of this year.
So almost 2 months ago?
Yeah, January 2nd,
13th.
Or, yeah.
Yeah. So
How about
I would,
a week? I'll take a week then.
I guess my only question is if there is a potential damages claim, I'm not super interested in extending this, but I don't really know, Carrie, if you have a crystal ball.
So I'm certainly not going to opine about risk in open session. We can have an impromptu executive session if the council would like to have one of those. From where I sit, I believe this is at this stage in the many years that this plat has been under review, a ministerial act that the council is being asked. And that's why it frankly was originally placed on consent to begin with. So that's what I'll add to that.
Councilmember Treen, do you want to reconsider your request?
Not at this time because, Pam was on the council at the time. David Pyle, you know how I feel about this. This is now the third time in 5 years that things have been brought forward in this particular fashion. And now on its third occasion, we still find ourselves in the same position we were in 2020. And I'm just kind of like, okay, at what point do we actually have regulations that make it so that we can reinforce our comp plan and the codes that we have in place? And so I just find it frustrating, again, to seem to always be behind the 8 ball in this city when it comes to development. And so I won't be supporting it. And so that's the reason why I pulled it off the consent is there's a fiscal imbalance in our budget. There's also, we haven't done the hard work yet to put in the regulations that we need. And we're sitting here now looking So I will stop at that because then it doesn't really have to, well, it's the town center. We don't have the kind of regulations in the town center plan that make it so that we can enforce things so that when the public comes in and says, this is what I want, and the Growth Management Act supports that the residents can make that call and we as a council can make that call, what kind of city we want, that we can
Point of
actually
order.
enforce that. So
State your point.
thank you.
Yeah, so this application was already made, so any changes we would make would not be applicable to this anyway. So I'm not sure that any of that is relevant.
So as I stated before, subdivisions are kind of subdivisions are pretty much the holy grail of land use law, and they're given a very high level of protection under vesting. So when this application was made for preliminary subdivision in 2019, and it was deemed complete for processing and went through the process, it was given 5 years to get through preliminary subdivision process, and then upon completion of that and the hearing examiner's decision being issued, it's given another 5 years to actually build the improvements and it's vested to the rules that were in place when the original application was made in 2019. That such is the subdivision law in Washington State.
Right.
Different than other types of development.
Sure.
So, the hearing examiner found, and the hearing examiner's decision is included in the agenda for this evening, that the proposed design met the city's subdivision standards and town center standards. The site development permits for construction, earth moving, infrastructure were reviewed by public works staff and by city planning staff and were found to be in compliance with the city's public works standards, including the construction of a consolidated regional stormwater facility, which meets the definition of regional stormwater facility that's included in the town center plan. So, our finding is that the project that's in front of us meets all of the requirements that are in place at the point in time when the application was submitted for review, and that is our recommendation, is to proceed with approving the final plat because it meets those standards that were in place. And this is what we mean by it being ministerial, and we mean by it being ceremonial, in that we can't decide to change the rules about what applies when we're at this point in the development process. We are trying to update the city's town center policies and codes, and we do have that opportunity to take a look at, as a community, what types of things we want to see changed as part of that process. That would be the point to make those changes if they're supported by the community and by the majority of the council.
And an EIS?
Your point is well taken. And so at this point, if there's not a second, then, or if there's actually not a motion, then I'm looking to see if someone is prepared to remove this off of consent and do a motion.
If I may.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I move that we approve, what would the motion be? Just to approve the final plat? Is that? Sorry, where is it? Oh.
There's actually a...
Oh, but I'm not on that page. Okay, thank you. I move to approve this resolution granting the final subdivision of Brownstones West for BSW LLC and authorizing the mayor to sign the final plat document allowing for recording of the approved document with King County Records.
Second.
Would you like to speak to your motion?
I would, and I just want to call out that we do have a hearing examiner, and the hearing examiner's report is just a couple of pages long, and it actually goes into great detail in there of all of the concerns that were raised at the public hearing and addresses each one of them. It also, I just want to read this part because it gives a little bit of shout out to our staff. It says the department staff report is well expressed, extremely thorough discussion of the regulations against which Brownstones West must be evaluated. It would serve no useful purpose to repeat the detailed analysis and conclusions contained in Exhibit 1. Therefore, it is incorporated herein. And then it goes on and talks about, again, that they found that all of our requirements, all of the laws have been met, and that there was no evidence found to deny this. So I just want to reassure the public that this has been through a very, very thorough review, not only by our staff, but as well as by the hearing examiner, and that he heard all of the comments in the public hearing and addressed each one of those. So I feel quite comfortable that we've been as thorough as possible, and we don't need to belabor this any longer. Thank you.
Council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Carries 6-1. We'll move on to council reports and city manager's report. Basically, for me, I'll let you go first, Scott, and then I'll just talk about the letter after.
Sure. Entirely up to you, Mayor. Happy to go last, too. My report will be quick. I just want to thank Mayor Howe and council members Stewart and Gupta for joining me down in Olympia a week and a half or so ago. We had the chance to meet with all 9 of our delegation members, and it was a really good conversations, and I'll let the council members speak to their experiences. But one of the things that we heard consistently was that the state also needs revenue, that the state's expenses are outstripping the revenues, and that they need to, they don't want to cut the services that they would have to, and so they're looking for ways to do that. And as of Friday, the governor came out talking about $4 billion in additional budget cuts he is proposing, as well as some folks down in the legislature starting to look for new revenue sources to try to generate support. I will also share that we heard from the King County Sheriff's Office that as part of the county's biennial budget process that is kicking off this year, they also have a deep hole that they have to fill, and that cuts are being assigned to departments to try to come up with if they can't find revenue sources. So I just want to point out that this is across the board. It's not just even local governments, it's the county and the state. And so while it's maybe not especially helpful to be in good company, we are all sort of facing the same structural imbalances. So with that, Mayor, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you. It would be great if Councilmember Gupta and Councilmember Stewart could speak to their experiences.
Great meetings. I think Councilmember Gupta and I only made it to 8 of the 9. We had another breakfast meeting that conflicted with one of the meetings, but very positive. We are well represented in Olympia, to say the least. Every one of our representatives and senators took time. They understood our issues. I think our lobbyists have done a great job of sharing what our agenda, our legislative agenda is. We got support from the 45th LD for our request for the work we may have to do on East Lake Sammamish Parkway to put that request in. We're cautiously optimistic. We also heard support for, and don't want to jinx anything, but that maybe, just maybe, we'll see some relief on the 1% cap on property taxes, because again, I like math. Inflation has not been at or below 1% since I can remember ever. And so only being able to raise our revenue, again, our 1% property tax cap is not a rate increase, but an overall revenue number increase. So if you look across, the history of Sammamish, because our home values go up, our rates generally go down every year. So that math just never pencils out. So I think all in all, it was incredibly positive. We have a couple of new representatives, so it was exciting to meet with them for the first time as well. And give them a shout out and say thank you for their time.
Councilmember Gupta.
I'll just briefly say it was a great experience. I learn a lot every time I go to Olympia. It's such a privilege to speak to our legislators and our fellow council members from across the region. I think what I take away every year is that the challenges we are facing are shared challenges, and the approaches we take are stronger when we all work together. And it really helps knowing what our fellow cities are doing, what our county is doing, what our state is doing, so that we don't feel isolated, we don't feel like we're in it alone, and we can take collective action, because I think that is how we get to the outcomes that we all desire. So thank you to Mayor Howe, Councilmember Stewart, and Scott. And Mike.
And Mike.
Yeah, it was looking forward to engaging further with AWC and our fellow cities.
Great. Well, I have a request for council. I'd like to see if we could sign on, please, to Energy Smart East Side, which is a letter that discussed specifically, it's 6 cities urging the commission to approve PSC's proposal to allocate $7.7 million at no-cost allowance revenues to continue PSC's CCA decarbonization program. Basically, as I understand it, this basically helps to fund transitioning single-family homes from gas heat to heat pumps, which is considered an essential strategy. So I would like to sign on, but I would like council approval to do that. So thumbs up, that's awesome. That's terrific. Are there other council reports that people would like to? Yes? Deputy Mayor Lamb?
I have a council report for King County Solid Waste Committee that I'm on. I just wanted to give an update on REPLUS. REPLUS is King County Solid Waste program to divert solid waste materials from going into landfill through recycling, reusing, and recomposting. So far, their projections are that through REPLUS, they will extend Cedar Hills, our landfill, by 2.5 years. And that's through 2042, I believe. And they're projected to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 200,000 metric tons per year. And the last is the REPLUS grants that King County Solid Waste will be offering. And that's a really great opportunity for our city to apply for a grant for a program that perhaps we have in our sustainability work plan. It's $20,000 to $50,000 for individual cities. So I'll be talking to staff about something that we can use.
Anyone else? I think we have an Eastside Fire and Rescue meeting that'll be coming up shortly. We'll be talking about hiring a consulting firm to help us find the next new chief. Fortunately, we have a couple of great consulting firms that are applying, and either one could do a good job. So I think we're in a really good position to do an extensive hunt. And, we were talking earlier about just how much fire has gone up. We're considered a pretty large and complex entity, and it's going to be really tough to find that next person to come into and fill Ben Lane's shoes. It's going to take a search probably across the U.S. to find that person. So this is not a small search. It's significant. So that's just sort of I just want to kind of set expectations on where we're headed with it. If there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 We're adjourned.